Hi students, I am Dr. Shubhakara, Biology faculty. Today let us discuss few questions from the chapter Organisms and Population. Let me introduce few concepts in this chapter that you have already studied, which include adaptations of organisms to the habitat. Students, you already know that organisms are not only adapted for the habitat for survival, it is also for reproduction. The second concept is a response of organisms to the habitat. The third concept is population density. Under this concept, we will understand how population density can be measured by using different parameters. Then followed by the population interactions. Under this concept, we have understood how two different organisms interact among themselves for better adapted for the environment. Let us take up one question. Which living organism is seen in the hot water spring having temperature more than 100 degrees centigrade? There are four options. The first option A is the methanogens. The methanogens are anaerobic bacteria which release the methane gas which can be used as a biogas. The option B is halophiles. Halophiles means organisms living in very salty condition. The option C is thermoacidophiles. As the name indicate, they are adapted for very high temperature and acidic condition. The fourth option D is neutrophils. Neutrophils are a type of white blood cells present in the blood of mammals. So, in this particular question, the option C is the correct answer because these are the organisms which survive in high temperature more than 100 degrees centigrade and hence called as thermoacidophiles. Therefore, option C is correct answer. The next question is, a few organisms can tolerate and thrive a wide range of temperature. Such animals are called. There are four options. The first option A, stenothermal. Stenothermal means organisms can tolerate and survive in a very narrow range of temperature, let us say between 35 to 40 degrees centigrade. The option B is eurythermal. These are the organisms which can tolerate a wide range of temperature, let us say 35 degree to 45 degrees centigrade. Thermophilic means they can survive even higher temperature, maybe around 90 degrees centigrade. Exothermal means this is a reaction wherein organisms release heat to the surrounding. Now, the options I have explained. The correct option for this particular question is option B, eurythermal. So, eurythermal are the organisms which can survive in wide range of temperature and hence the correct option is B, eurythermal. Look at the image. This is a kangaroo rat. it is adapted for desert environmental conditions, and it has two important physiological functions to minimize the water loss and to get the water. One is it will metabolize its body fat to release the water. Secondly, it will concentrate its urine to minimize the water loss from the body. Based on this, let us see one question: which pathway is followed by plants as a part of adaptation in an ecosystem where kangaroo rat is living? There are four options. Option A, C3 pathway. Option B is C4 pathway. Option C is Caam pathway, that is Caam pathway. Option D is Tca pathway. Let us come to the first option, C3 pathway. C3 pathway is the pathway in which carbon dioxide is fixed during the daytime in the presence of light. This is where carbon dioxide is converted to carbohydrates by all the plants during photosynthesis. The option B is C4 pathway. C4 pathway is exhibited by very few plants like sugarcane and maize, wherein the leaf anatomy is different, called as a Kranz anatomy, wherein the carbon dioxide is also fixed to form a malic acid. Malic acid undergo decarboxylation to release the carbon dioxide, then the carbon dioxide is fixed by using the C3 pathway. So, another pathway is Caam pathway. So, in this type of pathway is exhibited by the plants adapted for dry environmental conditions, wherein the plants close the stomata during daytime to prevent the loss of water, but they open stomata during night time. When they open stomata during night time, the carbon dioxide diffuses into the leaf, then will be converted to malic acid. During daytime, in the presence of sunlight, the carbon dioxide is again fixed in the form of C3 pathway. Now, what do you understand by this? This is a pathway exhibited by the plants growing in desert environmental conditions or dry environmental conditions, and hence the kangaroo rat also living in the same habitat like desert or dry environmental conditions, the plants living in that particular environment exhibit Caam pathway. Let me explain about the Tca pathway. Tca stands for Tricarboxylic acid pathway. This is the pathway present during aerobic respiration. So, during aerobic respiration of glucose, the glucose first enters into a first pathway called glycolysis. The end product of glycolysis is pyruvic acid. Now, in the presence of oxygen, the pyruvic acid enters into tricarboxylic acid cycle that is going to be taking place in the mitochondrial matrix. Let us take up another question. Biological control as pest control in agriculture is an example of. There is a term called biological control. Biological control, also called biocontrol. It is a mechanism wherein one living organism is controlled by using an other living organism. For example, to control the mosquito larva, a fish called Gambusia is released. So, biological control has a lot of significance in agriculture to control the pests. It has a lot of significance because the biological control uses only the living organism, not the chemicals like pesticides which otherwise harm the environment by causing pollution. In this question, there are four options. Option A is predation. Predation is a type of interaction wherein one organism eat up another organism. For example, as I told you, Gambusia fish eat up the mosquito larva. The option B is competition. It is a type of interaction. Two different species compete for the same resources. The option C is emigration. So, emigration is a process wherein new individuals exit from the population to somewhere else. That means, some of the individuals from the population leave the population to elsewhere permanently. So, it is related to the population density, because from the population when the individuals leave, the population density decreases. The option D is diseases. Now, in this particular question, the answer is option A, because predation is a mechanism wherein one organism eat up the other organism, and hence the correct option in this question is option A, predation. Let us take up another question. Abundant tortoise of Galapagos Islands and the goats living there, both were eating tender grass. State the relationship. The Galapagos Islands have a greater significance, because Charles Darwin visited Galapagos Islands and he identified small black birds called Darwin finches. So, those Darwin finches get adopted for adaptive radiation. So, in these islands, abundant tortoise were already inhabiting the place, and when the human settlement happened, the goats were introduced. When the goats were introduced, because of greater browsing efficiency of the goats, the abundant tortoise became extinct very soon. Now, let us see the options. The first option A, Amensalism. Amensalism is an interaction wherein one species neither benefited nor harmed, other species is harmed. For example, the Penicillium notatum is a fungi by releasing certain chemicals called as antibiotics, which prevent the growth of certain types of bacteria. In a competitive release, for example, if two species competing for the same resource in a habitat, one species will have a upper hand called as superior competitor. Other species will have a lower hand called inferior competitor. If the superior competitor is removed from the habitat, inferior competitor develop extensively. So, that process wherein superior competitor is removed from the habitat is called competitive release. So, that we are releasing the competition between these two species. Option C, interfering competition. Interfering competition generally will happen between two different species or two different unrelated species, wherein one species interferes with the inhabiting of another species. Option D, coexistence. Coexistence is two different species coexist by sharing the same resources in the same habitat. When it comes to the question says abundant tortoise of Galapagos Islands and goats living there, both were eating tender grass. State the relationship. In this question, since the goats have a greater browsing efficiency, the abundant tortoise are deprived of a grass. So, this type of competition wherein the goats interfered, existence of abundant tortoise, such a type of interaction or relationship is called interfering competition, and hence the option C is the correct answer. The organisms undergo two types of growth. One is called logistic growth and other is exponential growth. The logistic growth happens in the habitat where the resources are limited, whereas the exponential growth occurs in those habitats the resources are unlimited. Based on these two, let us take up one question, that is, the carrying capacity of a population is determined by. The carrying capacity means the maximum number of species the habitat can accommodate, beyond which the growth is not possible. There are four options. Option A is birth rate. Birth rate means the number of births happened in a given habitat in a given period of time. The death rate is number of deaths happened in a given population in a given period of time. And option C is limiting resources. The habitat has only so much resources which can support so many number of species. In this question, the correct option is C, because as I already told you, the carrying capacity applies for limiting resources, because any habitat will have a limiting resources will have the logistic growth. When you consider this between exponential growth and logistic growth, the logistic growth is the only realistic growth, because no habitat will have unlimited resources. Let us see one more question. Warm blooded animals like mammals from colder climate generally have shorter ears and limbs. This is an example of option A, Jordan's rule, option B, Allen's rule, option C, Wrench's rule, option D, Bergman's rule. Option A is Jordan's rule. According to this rule, closely related organisms occupy adjacent rather than identical ranges. B, Allen's rule. The organisms living in colder climatic conditions will have shortened ears and limbs to minimize heat loss to the surrounding. A Wrench rule says that this is the size dimorphism for sexual selection. Option D is Bergman's rule. Organisms living in colder climatic conditions are larger than organisms living in hot climatic conditions. In this particular question, the correct option is B, that is Allen's rule. It says that organisms living in colder climatic conditions will have shortened ears and limbs to minimize the heat loss to the surrounding. The next question is, the age pyramid with narrow base indicate. Age pyramid is the graphical representation of individuals of different ages in the habitat. When you consider a habitat with respect to the reproduction, there are three types of individuals. One is called pre-reproductives, second one reproductives, third one is called post-reproductives. Accordingly, when we consider an age pyramid, the base of the pyramid is occupied by the pre-reproductives, above which reproductives, and top is occupied by post-reproductives. In this question, age pyramid with narrow base indicate. When you consider a typical age pyramid, the base of the pyramid is occupied by the pre-reproductives. These two represent the reproductives and these two represent post-reproductives. In this question, the age pyramid with narrow base indicate. For example, let us see a pyramid with narrow base. This is an example for a pyramid with narrow base. Here the narrow base is occupied by pre-reproductives. Let us see the options now. Option A is high number of young individuals. Option B is low number of young individuals. Option C is high number of old individuals. Option D is low number of old individuals. In this case, the age pyramid with narrow base indicates the low number of young individuals. As you see in this age pyramid, the lower region or a base is occupied by pre-reproductives which are less in number. Hence, correct option for this question is the low number of young individuals. Let us consider an example of a food chain like this. So, here grass is eaten by a goat, goat is eaten by a tiger. When the grass is eaten by a goat, the energy present in the grass is transferred to goat. When the tiger eat upon the goat, the energy is transferred from goat to the tiger. So, what do you understand by this food chain? You will understand there is a transfer of energy from one species to other, from one trophic level to other trophic level in the form of prey and predator relationship. So, based on this, let us consider one example. Predators play important role in option A, conduction of energy across trophic level. You already understood there is a conduction of energy from grass to the goat, goat to the tiger, when the grass eaten by goat and tiger eats upon the goat. Second option is maintenance of species diversity. When many number of species sharing the same resources, there may be a competition. That competition is released by the predators so that species diversity is maintained in a habitat. Option C is control of prey population. When the prey population increases, that will be controlled by predators. And the fourth option is more than one option is correct. In this particular question, A, B, C, all the three options are correct, and hence the correct option is D, that is more than one option is correct. Let us consider one more interesting question. Which of the following is not an example of commensalism? See, commensalism is an interaction between two species wherein one species get the benefit, another species is neither benefited nor harmed, it is neutral. So, based on that, let us consider some examples. Option A, sea anemone and the clownfish. The clownfish is colorful, it has lot of predators. It is always inhabit wherever sea anemone are always present. Epiphyte or an orchid. Epiphyte is a plant which grows on other plants. Liver fluke is an endoparasite. Fleas are exoparasites. And option D is cattle egret and grazing cattle. The cattle egret are small birds, always keep moving along with the grazing cattle. When the cattle moves through the vegetation, they shake the vegetation to release the insects, and these insects are eaten by the cattle egret. Let us see the correct option now. Option A, sea anemone and the clownfish. In this interaction, the clownfish get the benefit of sea anemone because the sea anemone has tentacles. These tentacles of sea anemone keep the predators or enemies of clownfish away, so that in this interaction clownfish is benefited from the sea anemone and the sea anemone is neutral. Option B, epiphyte. In the forest there will be a canopy, sunlight cannot reach to the ground. In that case, some of the smaller plants particularly belong to the plant group called as orchid. They grow on other trees to catch the sunlight, and in that condition the epiphytes make use of mango tree in this case, but mango plant is not at all benefited. Liver fluke and the fleas. The liver fluke is an endoparasite, fleas is an ectoparasite. These two do not have any interaction at all. And the cattle egret and grazing cattle, cattle egret get the benefit from the grazing cattle for the insects, but grazing cattle do not get any benefit, neither harmed from the cattle egret. When you see the options and the question, which of the following is not an example for commensalism? In this case, the correct option is C, because in these two examples, those two organisms do not have any interactions. Students, as you know already, organisms undergo growth in two patterns. One is called exponential growth and other one is called logistic growth. When it comes to the exponential growth, when the resources are unlimited, organisms undergo growth in geometric pattern. So, the graphical representation of exponential growth assume J shape. Whereas in logistic growth, the organisms undergo growth till the habitat reach the carrying capacity, beyond which growth is not possible. The graphical representation of logistic growth assume S shape. Based on this concept, let us see one question. A J-shaped growth curve depicts option A, exponential growth when conditions are limited. Option B, exponential growth when conditions are unlimited. Option C, logistic growth when conditions are limited. Option D, logistic growth when conditions are unlimited. Let us see the options one after the other. Option A says exponential growth when conditions are limited. In this case, exponential growth always takes place when the conditions are unlimited. In other words, conditions means resources. When the resources are unlimited, organisms undergo exponential growth. Option B, exponential growth when conditions are unlimited. When the organisms undergo exponential growth when the resources are unlimited, and the graphical representation of the exponential growth assume J shape. The logistic growth when conditions are limited. When the organisms undergo logistic growth, when the conditions are limited, it assumes S shape. Logistic growth when conditions are unlimited. There won't be logistic growth when the conditions are unlimited. In this particular question, the correct option is option B, because when the resources are unlimited, organisms undergo exponential growth, and graphical representation of exponential growth assume J shape.